Hi, everybody. Day 2. How's everyone feeling? Good? Yeah. Well, thanks so much for stopping by this talk. I'm Michaela. I've had the privilege of working with builders and no-coders such as yourself the last 5 years, trying to solve problems in the rapidly evolving business landscape. And no-code tools are an amazing resource, such as Airtable, to solve some of the hardest business challenges. And it puts those tools in the hands of builders, of everyday builders, those that don't necessarily have the coding ability, really can create exponential impact at your organization. So really excited to talk through NoCode Business Apps, what that means. And in today's talk, we're going to learn how one builder was able to transform their organization with a no-code solution and transform their team. We'll talk through trends of how organizations are changing and touch on AI. It's a very exciting topic right now. I'm sure excited to learn from all of you and how you're thinking about AI with no-code. And then finally, by the end, you'll have some best practices to take away and to bring back to your team around how to drive more connection with data, teams, and workflows, as the title says there. So with that, I would like to start talking about data. So data is at the center of organizations, whether you're a Fortune 500 company or a growing startup. And teams, organizations are tracking all types of data. You have projects and tasks, of course, but marketing teams need to track campaigns. They need to be able to track content. Product teams need to be able to track the products they're launching, the feedback that's coming in. So there are many, many forms of business data, and this critical data needs to be utilized in such a way to make it efficient. If you have a lot of data and you're not able to use it, it's definitely not necessarily as useful. Shared data. So when you're able to share that data across the team, that's when you can start to really innovate and advance what you're able to do with that original data. It creates for more connection. If product and marketing and operations are all talking to one another, just as some examples, your organization is able to move as one. And then artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence is in no small order changing the business landscape rapidly. And what we know when it comes to data is that the quality of data that you provide, these AI models, directly correlates to the quality of output that you're able to get. So having that quality data, having that very personalized business data that you're able to provide these models gives you a more differentiated, valuable, deeply valuable response. So I want to start with a story. This is Sarah, and Sarah had started a role on an operations role on a research team at a Fortune 500 company. And when Sarah had joined the team, their data looked a little bit like this. All right. Yeah, I'm hearing some chuckles in the audience. How does this feel when you look at this? I see a lot of squiggly lines, a lot of connection across different tools, but it feels chaotic. It is a bit disorganized, and as an employee in this environment, it can be pretty stressful. So this creates a number of challenges for their research team. One of those challenges is that they're using a Google Sheet. And Google Sheets, a very, very powerful tool in a lot of situations. But the issue here is that it was updated infrequently, about once a quarter, which is akin to checking today's weather with last season's forecast. So you're really not getting that real-time insight that you're looking for. It also makes it really hard to trust that information. And when you have critical cross-functional relationships like when the research team needs to talk with the marketing team, they're often left guessing, which sample is this, which participant is connected to this data, and so on and so forth. So it really makes it hard to build trust across the organization, but also in the data that you're looking at. And then finally, that data is siloed across various tools. So without having that end-to-end project connection, it makes it difficult for you to understand that full story. So these pain points for this research team are definitely not unique to just this team. Many organizations today are facing similar challenges. So how did we get here? Now I want to shift to some trends in the way in which teams are working and working differently. So the way that teams work have changed. In the last couple of years, I personally have worked remotely more than ever before in my career. My manager that I worked with most recently, we hadn't met in person for 2 years before I had a chance to actually see them and build that rapport. And very excited to meet you all in person as well today. It's very important. So being distributed and decentralized, that creates the need for innovative new ways of building trust, innovative new ways of working together. And when you have, in this example, 4 different functions across an organization, how do these teams continue to collaborate together? Adding on top of that, teams are making decisions around tools and purchasing solutions that solve their unique challenges as teams need to do. But this can create noise, this can create a bit of disconnection if a tool that the product team brings in isn't talking to operations or marketing. And then another layer on this is that we have access to more data than ever before. That's not the challenge. It's almost too much. It's so noisy. How do you find efficiency? How do you find insights from the data that we have access to? So all of these are a recipe for a challenge across an organization. And what happens as a result? Well, we see some pretty epic fractures, some pretty fragmented data silos across these teams. So product is no longer directly connected to what marketing is thinking about and doing, and that data is siloed, and it makes it very difficult for these teams to work together. And this affects employees across the team very deeply. In fact, a recent study found that 2.4 hours on average were spent by employees searching for information. That's about a quarter of the day. And if you scale that up to 5,000 employees, that's 3 million hours a year spent. So that is serious dollars lost and a ton of friction. And very likely in this room collectively, we've been searching for the data that we need to do our job. So I know that this feels very real for me. So 367, that is the average number of apps that large organizations purchase and to bring into their team, into their organizations to solve specific use cases. And that is a massive technical debt. That is a ton of tools to be able to navigate and understand how one connects to the other and where that valuable information, where those key insights, what you need to get your job done are found. And so these come in a number of different flavors. There are many different types of tools that make up this number. So just to break that down a little bit, we have the systems of record. So these are large implementations, rather technical, rather expensive, potentially a bit inflexible. And that can be a very solid solution, but it does add that level of complexity. We have project management tools. Now, these definitely promise to bridge those gaps, those fragmented data silos, but are very much positioned and in capability supporting those project and task level use cases. And teams have much more data, much more critical data beyond projects and tasks that they need to track. Additionally, what we'll see is that there is an alignment across the organization. Maybe one team is using Monday and another is using Asana, and that can create a bit more silos across the business. We have the bottoms-up SaaS tools. So these are out-of-the-box solutions for very specific use cases. Again, this can make implementation very fast. You see a tool and you know it's going to solve for exactly what you're looking for in this very specific use case. But that can then again make those pockets of data. And then finally, sort of a newer space, these IT-owned low-code tools. These can take a lot of pressure, be a lot of pressure on the IT team to implement and be a bit technical at the moment. So just an overview of different flavor of tools. So what if teams could do something different? What if they could work together in new ways, and where challenge there is opportunity, where there's challenge there's opportunity. And for Sarah and the research team, when they started using Airtable, they started to solve some of these challenges. So they started small with a single use case. Remember that Google Sheet we mentioned earlier that was updated infrequently? Well, they brought it into Airtable, imported it into an app, and this immediately started to change the way that they were working with their data. She shared it with the team, and this created that single source of truth. They started to align around, all right, this is where our project tracker is, and having that baseline agreement, very important. But additionally, they were now able to sort by parameters that were important to their team. And as we saw in that 2.4 hours, the average time looking for data, well, now they could get answers to their research director in a matter of minutes that took hours before of manually sort of digging in and looking at those tools at their Google Sheet. And it just expanded from there. So over time, it naturally grew into an ecosystem, a global research repository that went far beyond just tracking initiatives, because these initiatives were connected to a larger system, and a larger system of tools and comms and effort around the business. So they could then report on results, capture status updates, and share that out, or capturing those project details via form, getting intake, and really creating an internal ecosystem, connected apps platform, which we'll talk about in a moment, to drive their business. And what does this do? Well, it increases the trust and increases the collaboration across the team. Now, when they were talking to executive leadership, design comms, market research, they all had that single place that they were aligned around, that this is where our center of truth is. This is where we can go to and trust that this information is accurate. For their research participants, it decreased the time that they were able to get back. They were able to hit their deadlines when they promised, hey, we'll get back to you by X date. It improved their participant experience. And ultimately, when they needed to send follow-ups, they used an automation to send those follow-ups as opposed to taking time and effort manually to drafting each one of those. So really building out this ecosystem. And it elevated the impact of this department within the larger organization. So instead of being in the weeds, really feeling that stress of where is all of our information, how do we utilize this effectively, it elevated the impact, the strategic impact of their department. And after around 6 years, they 2x'd the size of this department within the organization, and they validated a business need for a research librarian. So they really invested in this function within the business. And now Sarah pulls a biannual report based on all this data that's being tracked all in one place. So what what are builders, no-coders in this situation doing differently? And what was it that made this successful, and some tenets that we can pull out of this? Well, Sarah used the shared data to align the organization and get faster business results. There was some serious time savings here. Because they aligned around what everyone cared about at the core, they were able to move faster. Because of that, because they had alignment on that single platform, they built trust. And that is just less stress and more connection, which I think we're all trying to create across our teams, across our organizations. And then finally, they had reduced risk. Instead of having many tools, they consolidated the tooling, and it made it a lot smoother process. All right, so now that we've focused on the how and seen one example, let's focus into digging in, or focus on the what. Now let's focus on the how. And just a level set with the group here. Who here has used Airtable, using Airtable? Just show of hands. All right. Wow, awesome. Most of the people in the room. Great, so that's amazing. So excited to hear that. Would love to talk with any of you after in terms of how you've been using it. But this should be valuable if you haven't used Airtable. If you have, I'm excited to share some of our latest thinking around what it means to build business apps and no-code apps within an organization. So I'm going to walk through an example of exactly that. Before I do, I want to look at the highest level what Airtable is, and answering that question first, especially for those that haven't used the platform. So Airtable is a connected apps platform. And just giving a name of what we saw a few moments ago in that example, the idea here is that with Airtable, anyone can align their organization, create a flexible, connected, scalable app or system of apps built on top of shared data. And they can start to solve and support those key business needs with that. So this, as we saw in our previous example, this aligns folks around a single source of truth. And it also enables any builder, despite their ability to code, to actually create these solutions, because the line of business folks, those folks that are working day to day in the data, they're the ones most familiar, most invested in that data. And so being able to manifest that, put those details into Airtable and start to create change is very, very empowering, very exciting for businesses. So Airtable was founded on the premise that software should not dictate how you work. You should dictate how your software works. So this is sort of that first principle of the Connected Apps platform. And in this way, any builder, sort of reiterating, any builder can then build out these business apps. So let's look at an example of how one would do that. So here we're in Airtable, and let's imagine that I'm planning out a headcount, a pipeline for headcount, and I need to build out an app that helps me track that. So the first sort of question is, what are we managing in our app? And starting with, sorry. Yeah. Yeah. So an app has several layers, the interface, of course, but then also automation and then data. So those three different layers are, yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's a great question. Yeah, trying to have that full stack of interface, logic, and data within Airtable. So this allows someone with, again, no experience coding to build this out and personalize it for their needs. So we have a few popular data sets to help get someone started. In this case, a people-like table, super helpful. From there, you can choose a number of details that are important to you. What a name, let's start there, a photo, location, but then some other key details like tenure or start date, things that you may want to track in your workflow. And of course, you can update this later, but just to help you stand this up quickly. Then you can elevate this with add-ons. So exponentially, maybe adding an analysis around capacity planning or hiring pipeline, adding a page around a recruitment schedule. So additional functionality to supercharge your app early on in the building experience. And then making it your own, personalizing, custom logo, color, and aligning with your organization's branding. And then sharing. So this is so critical within an enterprise. Having granular permissions, being able to share the right information with the right audience at that right time. So especially with people data, with being able for everyone in the HR team to see all of the details in this, very important. Every hiring manager only needs to see the roles that they're hiring for. And then throughout the organization, having some sort of onboarding process where we filter down a version of this allows for scale of this original data set. So just giving folks a flavor or an example of what we mean by seamless, intuitive app building at the very beginning of the process. All right, let's talk about AI. I know this is a very exciting, fast space that I am trying to keep up on. But when it comes to data, the critical business data, it is especially exciting because AI is giving us new abilities to interpret and understand our existing data. It's also giving us new abilities to generate new types of data. So let's look at an example of what this looks like in Airtable. So in this example, I'll be a product manager, and I'm reviewing customer feedback. We have customer feedback coming in, and in my workflow, I have a number of things I need to do. When that feedback comes in, I need to summarize it, just understand the context. What is this about? I need to categorize it for a product roadmap to understand patterns. If we're getting hundreds of pieces of feedback, where are the most frequently asked functionality? It's critical for us to understand as we build out our roadmap. And I need to send a response. I need to make sure our customers feel heard and thank them for their feedback, respond to that feedback. So we'll start at the very beginning of the workflow where we're submitting a new piece of feedback. When that feedback is submitted, a new record is created in the app. And with AI, we can now generate all of those details, the summary, the product area, and even the sentiment of that feedback in real time. And if you scale that up to hundreds of pieces of feedback, that is potentially hundreds of hours saved because that's a very manual thing to do, and it allows you to elevate your insights on a strategic level. Now we're taking a look, all right, this is about bigger navigation buttons. We know it's a visual design, product area, and it has a negative sentiment. So we want to respond to this customer. We can now use a second AI field, which is the functionality we just released in beta very recently, to generate a draft email to this customer based on what was previously generated. So this is chaining those different AI outputs together to compound the impact. So we see that generating there, and now we have a first draft. And this field is flexible enough that, maybe this is way too long and we want to limit it to a number of character counts. You can absolutely adjust that. This is just a V1 getting you started. I'm sure most folks in the room here have tried ChatGPT, trying to continue to iterate. And so very exciting to sort of have this be getting us to a first draft and then being able to send that email off with an automation, just selecting that button there. So organizations that are connecting critical data around their business need two things. They need a tool that can scale with them as they grow, and they also need a tool that can integrate with their other systems of record. So in this next year, we've invested in and we're focused in on a number of updates exactly in this lane of work. We're expanding the number of integrations that we can support with Airtable, and this allows greater flexibility for organizations to pull information in and take other information out into and through their ecosystem, through their connected apps. So that definitely adds a level and layer of additional customization and flexibility. Additionally, we are, in the last year, we've doubled our record limits here to 500,000 records an app, but we have greater ambitions of 100x scale to support data at the largest organizations and support those greater use cases. So I want to wrap up with some best practices. And we've talked about workflows, we've talked about data, and we've talked about teams, but at the core of all of this is connection. So 3 steps here that you can take, very tactical steps that you can take back to your teams to start to surface and elevate and find more connection. So starting with the pain, honestly, starting with where are things inefficient? Where is there manual processes being had? I will recap all these steps at the very end of this, so if folks want to take a screenshot or two. Where can we see, where do we need visibility? Where do different folks need visibility into components of their workflows? And so understanding those areas of improvement. The second is then identifying those opportunities for connection. How can we bring teams together? How can we start to have conversations about, what do we have in common? What do we all care about? In the earlier example, everyone was really invested in that research repository, and it connected to exec leadership, operations, design, maybe in different ways, but it all was a critical data set that their team could align around. And then striving for consistency. So teams definitely need to stay flexible, but Airtable is a relational database at its core. It is a structured way of organizing your data, and a little bit of rigidity, a little bit of systematizing this can go a long way. Because if you have a standardized process, it means everyone is aligned around the same ideas, has a predictable set of systems that they can support, that can support them when things happen, when we have to pivot, which happens quite a bit in this space especially. So 3 steps here: moving towards an org-wide solution, auditing for inefficiencies, identifying opportunities for connection, and then striving for that consistency in that order. Some final thoughts. So again, we started this conversation around data, and I want to end with connection. I think that if we focus on connecting our teams, bringing our teams together, those data needs will organically emerge. So one best practice that you can start to implement is setting up a workflow office hours, bringing folks together cross-functionally to understand and surface those shared pain points, those needs, checking notes, understanding where we can identify inefficiencies. And then from that, finding what we have in common. And we may find that some teams, there may be overlaps that you don't realize if you're not having those conversations, if you're siloed across functions. And then lastly, shared language. Really being able to speak in the same taxonomy, agreeing on, all right, a project means this. It is amazing how many times I've worked on initiatives where we don't quite have an agreement necessarily on what a project is, whereas what is a task and all of that, and really getting firm on what you're talking through and all being at that same altitude, which then elevates the entire experience for across the organization. Thank you so much. This has been a pleasure. I will happy to take any questions.
Test, test. Thanks a lot for that presentation. I've worked as an Airtable consultant. I'm Rupert. Worked as an Airtable consultant for a number of years now.
Awesome.
I would love to get your input on buy versus build in a way. So a lot of customers approach me. They say, let's build everything in Airtable from now on, right? And then they want to build their CRM in Airtable. So let's say a CRM has 50 to 100 critical features that now needs to be rebuilt in a way. You can take a template, but I mean that entire area needs improving, I think, in Airtable. How do you look at that, like taking an existing CRM that's proven, that works, versus building stuff in-house?
It's a great question. And I think,
and I know there's not a one-fits-all answer.
We're going to figure it out right now.
Okay, great.
No, I think it's I think it all comes down to data ownership, data responsibility. Again, the premise of you're building a tool for your unique organization. That is really difficult in terms of scaling. There isn't any one template that we can copy and paste to every organization. And it sounds like you're very familiar with that. So in addition to the tool, I think it really is around empowerment and setting the expectation, because you're developing this is very much a product development motion in a way, and it needs to be maintained. That 50, 100 critical items, there needs to be buy-in around the business to be able to stand up and support that. So as one individual or a few individuals maintaining these ecosystems, that is a lot on one or two people's shoulders. And so where we've seen most success is when there is a group of internal employees that are also really supporting those systems as well. Yeah, and it's a tough challenge for sure, because it can get really complicated really fast. Hopefully, does that answer the question, Rupert? I can wax philosophical on this, yes. Yes, project tracking all the way to that whole ecosystem, yeah.
Would it be maybe better off to just take an existing time tracking tool that has figured like a lot of these things out already, has run into these challenges already, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's that comes from the entire industry. There's a lot of really, really good software that has figured a lot of stuff out already, that has had customer feedback for 10 years. And I think a challenge for Airtable is when it goes into these core processes.
Right.
Is learning from that, right? And sort of helping me as a consultant, but also customers at large, of course, like helping people getting up to speed quicker on the challenges that they will encounter in any of those use cases and verticals that they apply the software.
1,000%. And I do think, yeah, Airtable for everything, as opposed to maybe using some of those out-of-box solutions. And that's why I think supporting more integrations and allowing teams to, again, work that way, it's not going to solve 100% of every single use case. And to your point, being able to pull in from, hey, this tool works exactly the way you want and allows that interoperability. And I think that's where you have that flexibility and the power of no-code, right? And how exciting it is to sort of build out these systems.
We are working on the automotive field, and we already use Airtable a lot. So it's really a great product. But we see some
Thank you.
improvements.
Yeah.
Especially on different fields, but especially on the interface environment. So do you think Airtable will improve this part? For example, will we be able one day to have like a Webflow connection, but not using Webflow, but without connection with Webflow, have the same kind of pixel perfect thing?
Yeah.
Or it's a dream that is not going to be true?
Yeah, no, I'd love to hear that you're using the tool. And Interfaces is definitely a newer layer of the product. We launched that in the last couple of years. So 1000% in terms of we are improving it as you go. And Webflow is a fabulously powerful tool. They have really mastered the front end functionality. So I can't necessarily speak to the exact integration, but to your point, being able to support that level of insight or that level of integration would be key. And that's why we're really investing, I think, kind of sort of similar to the answer before, investing in allowing more tools to be supported from Airtable, maybe potentially as a back end, and having Webflow being that front end. But yeah, our interface, our in-app first-party interface is definitely a space that we're constantly evolving.
And so the second question, and in the same spirit, you can say no, but is it able one day to be connected with, for example, Xano, or for you it's completely opposite of your direction?
Sorry, I didn't understand.
Xano?
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 I haven't heard that one,
Okay.
but
Xano, it's a backend, very strong backend. So you can put all your data over there, and so we can use Airtable for one thing and save all the data in Xano. You don't know Xano? Okay.
I'm not, but actually to the data scale question, it sounds like that may be an even more robust database. That's where we're at least trying to scale up and increase the size because 500,000 per app does not fit many enterprise needs. So I totally hear you on that. Again, I'm happy. We do have a booth here, so please come say hi. If you have more specific technical questions, I'm sure we can dig in there. No, you're good.
You refer to Airtable now a lot as a no-code platform.
Yeah.
I heard Airtable refer like they themselves call themselves a low-code platform. So that no low-code divide.
Yeah.
Having used Airtable now for a number of
Yeah.
7-8 years or so, like when being able to use JavaScript in Airtable got introduced, like that was amazing for me, and I would love to see Airtable going more into a low-code direction.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really great question. And this is a no-code conference, so I did want to bring forward and speak to that part of the functionality, but you're 1000% right. We have scripting. You can get into API integration. I think the big thing is that as we're focusing on the enterprise, we want to enable enterprise builders to be able to build out those no-code solutions, and they may not be as technical. So that, I think, is probably the short of it, but yeah, I totally hear you. There are low-code functionalities, and I'm sure you're...
Like in the interface,
yeah.
Maybe also going back to the other question, so that would be, you can use HTML on the interface side, or you can use React on the interface side,
Yep.
right, giving that option.
Yeah, an escape hatch to... And that does give you so much more flexibility, but for 95% of users, it's going to be that no-code solution. Hi.
Thank you very much for the presentation.
Of course.
I'm NoCode consultant and I'm an Airtable fan. I have to say that. I have a question with regards AI. I hope we have some time.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know what kind of LLM you are using currently.
Yeah.
OpenAI, I assume?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have the opportunity to test another one, just as open source or Llama, for instance? And do you have some kind of comparison between various tests you performed?
I'm not aware of the specifics in terms of what models we tested out. I do know that we're connected, the functionality that I just demoed, that is connected to OpenAI's API. So we have 3.5 and 4 available today. But in terms of your question on other models, I do think that that's something we're looking at because this space is moving so quickly. Having a tool where your business data lives and then giving you the flexibility of other models, which are better at certain things, is very important and very valuable to customers. So right now, we only have those two. I'm sure it's on the radar of the product team in terms of other models that may be good, Anthropic being a massive sort of comparison point to OpenAI. So yeah, really great question, but I do think it is a very strategic component of the strategy is to be able to pull from and have that flexibility of the various models, because we don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I'm like, thank you.
Morning.
Good morning.
I wanted to ask about accessibility in Airtable. How is Airtable in terms of accessibility?
It's a great question. I think we should maybe jump to the booth to answer that specifically. I want to make sure that we address that super specifically. It's a very important space, and making sure that, yeah, folks are able to access the tool. So, yeah, please follow up with us at the booth on that one. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Very concerned about the impact, and I wanted to know if you are also developing the monitoring of the carbon impact of all these applications.
Yeah. Yeah, it's another great question. I can't speak to the specifics in terms of that numbers or initiatives right now, but please come chat with us at the booth. We have a number of other folks as well from the team, and yeah, would love to be able to answer that question, but definitely something, I'm sure it's on our radar. Yeah, thank you. We are GDPR compliant, so I can't answer that. But in terms of all the other details, we do have all the specs and that are on our site. And maybe I'm repeating myself now, but come chat with us to get the specifics.
I think that you have to sign a DPAs in order to be GDPR compliant with Airtable in order to be compliant with the sub-processors and so on. You can go to the
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, but thank you for asking. I really appreciate the questions. It's all very, very important. All right. I have a few more minutes, but this has been fabulous. I've had a lot of fun. Thank you so much for the questions.